Maloy day, talo falava. I hope everyone is having a great Sabbath on our side of the world and Saturday, probably for everyone else. Want to welcome all our viewers up to this live digital cover session. Tua and I are happy to do a live for the first one for 2026.
Yes.
Tua, how's it going in your neck of the woods of the entertainment capital of the world?
Yep. Everything's great here. There's no snow, which is one of very important to
Ooh,
me in this time of the year. That there's no snow on the ground. Family's doing well.
but nice and cool though,
2026,
eh?
nice
Nice and
and
cool.
cool,
Uh,
50, 60 degrees, and crisp air, and it's good. Everything's great on this side of the world, Mr. Ateroa.
Very nice, very nice. I also want to let everyone know on our viewers that we are coming live to you on YouTube, X, Patreon, Instagram, and Facebook. So we are delighted to have you guys join us, and also throw in some, questions that you may have. And also, we will always address first our paid viewers too on the who always subscribe in the paid monthly to our channel, so they get first preference. But other than that, Tua, do we have anything else before we kind of move into some of the discussion points or anything?
No, nothing. It's as you mentioned, it's we take great appreciation in all of
Mm,
our viewers who subscribe, and also on the super chats, and we try to incorporate comments as much as we can, but
yeah.
we do have a variety of topics today. Mr. Ateoro and I just kind of skimmed through some of the topics. We may not get to all of them, but we do have a good string of topics to kind of discuss as we go through. And we'll start with the first topic, Mr. Atearoa. The Polynesianized Podcast 2025 in review and impact. What's kind of your thoughts, Mussy, on how we've done? We're coming close on year two, right? And 2025 has come to a close. What's been kind of your experience and your thoughts on the journey we've been on?
My personal reflection so far since doing the Polynesianized podcast, Tua, is probably we are definitely making an impact, just like subtle impacts here and there with people's knowledge of Polynesian history. Probably a lot more understanding of the Tuitonga's role in Polynesia, because there is not really much information about that. And and I think we're having discussions on our Polynesian history. So I think it's very very good, because I don't think there's been many discussions of our history. So we're just a minor part that's impacting this refinement of our history, that we can understand our past. And why is it important? Oh, well, in order to know the future, you must understand your past. And I feel like as a people, the more that we understand our past, it enables us to maybe make better choices and be proud of who we are and how far we've come. That's just
Mm,
me. So
no,
that's my thoughts there, Tua. Anything from you?
yeah, 100%. I think I'm not aware of any other podcast or content creators out there that have like really dove into our history and contemporary news, what's
Yeah.
going on around in the Polynesian space, and had such an impact as we've had, in my opinion. Right? I
Mm,
mean, the the reaction, both from the positive and the negative, have been extreme. Right?
yeah.
We've had the extreme of, man, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. To the other side is, you guys are going to cause civil war and bloodshed, and even to the point, Mr. Aotearoa, people threatening, quote unquote, our employment, right? Like, even people are
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah,
we're,
yeah,
we're
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
ruin you, which is kind of crazy, you know.
yeah, yeah.
But it's been kind of cool to see that impact. And really, one of the things that I have kind of noticed, especially in 2025, I see people opening up to the idea of, people always say, oh yeah, we were one people, but it was
Mm.
kind of cliche, just kind of meaning like, oh
They
yeah, we
didn't understand how that became one people. It was just, yeah, one people. We all navigated, but that was about it, right? Mm,
exactly. They're just like, oh, we all were brown skinned, we all had canoes, you know what I mean? We all ate taro and blah blah blah.
mm,
But we've really brought to the table is like we were a nation. We had political, social, right? Um,
mm,
structure that really made an impact, and we were trading one with
mm.
another. And there were specific areas that were specialists in their trade, and there was a network of moving those resources and that knowledge around, a much more organized and much more structured, rather than, oh yeah, we were one people, meaning we
Yeah,
just we just like the similar stuff. We've
yeah.
really challenged that. We've also really challenged the typical talking points of the academia, and also little pockets of knowledge or ideas in small parts, like isolated parts of Polynesia, right? Where, for our brothers and sisters in Samoa, that's where we've had a lot of our focus on, is that. And it's really, I mean, it really started because people think we went out of our way to target to target Samoa. It kind of just naturally happened, in my opinion, because we came out and we talked about the Tuitonga, how expansive it was, and the most immediate reactions were
Correct.
Tui Manua, Tui Pulotu. We shot down the Tui Pulotu very quickly, right? Like we
Mm.
considered the Tui Pulotu, we looked around a little bit and we're like, yeah, there ain't nothing there, right? Like there's nothing there. Like
We put out that
there's not
smoke
even
real
a
quick.
squirrel. There's not even a squirrel
Yes.
running on that wheel, you know.
Yeah.
And then we for the people who jumped in and said, "Oh, you're from the Tuimanua, you're the Tuimanua Empire." We're like, "Oh, okay." We kind of opened it up. We saw a little squirrel running. It was like, "Okay, let's see what kind of squirrel this is." And we dug into it, and we're like, "Yeah, it's nothing more than a squirrel running on its wheel,
Who runs a little
right?"
bit longer,
And
a
and and
squirrel
so
or a hamster, Tua? What runs a little bit faster
uh,
or longer?
I would say squirrel.
Okay. So the squirrel is the tui manua, and then the tui peloti was the hamster that didn't last too long. Yeah.
The hamster. Yeah, the
Mm.
hamster just went like one rotation per hour. At least a squirrel is one rotation per minute.
Eh,
You know, but
eh.
it's been. I mean, honestly, there's been some interesting influences that we've had.
Yeah.
One is, remember we reviewed that one AI podcast,
Yes.
and the tokatufa term.
Mm.
AI is picking up that content, and that content is primarily from Tevita Fale, the founder of the Polynesian Ice. And
Correct.
so I think that is tremendous. We're making an impact. And one thing's for sure, Masi, this year we've had millions of views when you look across all of our social media, and tens of thousands and potentially hundreds of thousands of comments, which is one
Mm.
of our goals, is to have
Mm.
more people talking about this, because the more people talk, the bad ideas tend to die off,
Mm.
right? And
Mm.
so that's something that's really important, from my perspective.
Nice.
St Lavu Lavu says, "Kautama malo en awe. Good work, Tokos. The shift towards truth seeking and conversation has begun." Absolutely. What are your thoughts to that comment, Mr. Atero?
No, great comment by Lau Lau. That's what this whole live digital kava session is for. Is just finding facts, truths, and having a conversation, and us refining that conversations to try to find truth. So, awesome. That's what the talanoa is at the live digital kava session. So, yeah, good point.
Another impact slash review for 2025. We're now going close to year two,
Mm,
where people who've attacked us and our position on social media, we say, please come and join us. Let's sit down and have a conversation. We will listen to all the evidence you want to bring up, right? And all these things. We don't even have to debate. We won't even, it doesn't even have to be a debate. Just come on, present your data, because some people are so passionate online, right? Like they'll write
Yeah.
paragraphs and paragraphs, and they'll come back and respond. Mussy, we have certain people who respond negatively to us that have been doing so for 2 years and consistently.
That
And
is
we
crazy.
consistently saying, come join us. And yet they'll say, nah, I'm okay. But they're so committed and they so much believe in these ideas that we kind of reject because we've looked at the studies, we've had conversations with a variety of people, and when we say, hey man, it seems like this is something really important to you, you seem to have lots of data, come just let the viewers and the listeners, don't be stingy, share the knowledge.
Mm.
And no one has come, and we're going on year 2. Why do you think that's the case, Masi?
Some people just want to believe in their in their ideology and storytelling that they've always heard. So it's kind of like some people just want to stick with that, but still want to watch and just hear our podcast. I think that is evident to us with some of the numbers we've seen. I think we've got
Yeah,
46% of people who have viewed our content but not subscribed. So I think there's a
yeah,
lot
but
of people kind of
consistently
like that,
return to watch. Yeah.
consistently return to watch. So I think some people just have certain ideas when they've been hearing it from their father, their grandfather, or their grandmother, or whatever, and maybe they know it's not as strong to present it to everyone else, but I don't know, man. I don't know. It's doing this and presenting your ideas is maybe for us we like to do it. It's maybe too transparent for others to do it right in front, and instead of putting it
Yeah.
into
No, that's
words.
fair.
I don't know. That's what I think.
No, and honestly, if someone just said that, I usually, the feeling I get with some of these guys
Mm.
is, that guy who never gets into the field to play, or they don't know the feeling of what it's like to have a 300 plus pound monster run at you and you have to
Mm.
tackle them, or you have to run with the ball and someone's coming to try to take your head off, but they're sitting on the sideline, first ones to criticize, first ones to say, oh,
Yeah.
you should have done it this way, you should have done it that way. And we're like, hey, come and show us. Come and show us. There's people telling us how to name our podcast with all these different names, trying to, they think they're going to hurt our feelings. And we're like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what would be a good idea? Go start your own podcast. Name it whatever you want to name it. And then let us know how that goes. Let us
Yeah.
know with all your suggestions and your ideas.
Yeah.
You're like the guy sitting on the sideline telling the professional rugby player how to play rugby.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
see how long you last. See
Yeah.
how long you
Yeah.
last. Yeah. There's a
It looks
reason
like
why
we
many
have.
no, I was just gonna say too. I think we kind of went through the numbers, and it did say that most podcasts die within what? Don't even make it a year or something.
Don't
So,
even make it a year.
it's not
90%.
as easy. 90%. So it's not as easy as people think. Just go up there and have content to talk about
No,
having a
no.
podcast.
And it's not. And to be honest, a lot of people have a problem with the content.
Yeah.
We have almost the opposite problem, right, Masi? I think we still have maybe 20 episodes that we haven't
Ye-
even released
correct.
officially on the podcast,
Yeah.
right? And we're
Hmm.
slowly releasing those. That's why every week, it's been a few weeks since we had a live, but
Hmm.
almost every week we've released between 1 and 3 episodes, even though we haven't gone live, because we're maxing out on the storage on our platform of 50 hours of content.
Yeah.
Like, so that is the biggest hurdle. And like you said, Masi, when we look at the statistics on YouTube,
Hmm.
top 10%. Because like you said, 99% of these podcasts died. We look at the numbers that we've had interactions on Facebook, millions of views, tens of thousands of comments. We look at Spotify,
Yeah.
right? We're top 10% video podcast on Spotify,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So I mean, like you said, it's is it easy? Is it like, are there hard days to do this? Yeah, because it takes time and energy,
yeah.
but we believe that this is an important discussion that needs to happen, and
Mm-hmm.
we believe that ideas should be challenged, and ideas need to have a place to they need a ring, they need an octagon, and that's what we're providing a ring and an octagon so these ideas can compete, because when we look around, there's nowhere that provides that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think that's the thing that we keep on going. I don't know many people who can explain and talk about our Polynesian history as as a variety of Tongan, Samoan, Hawaii. I think we've touched a lot of from little bits here and there, and we don't do little surface stuff. We've kind of gone really deep into the sophistication and maybe certain customs that our Polynesian ancestors used to practice that, man, like I said, I don't know, I haven't come to a broadcast that somebody has kind of delved into deep to that, and that's why we find a purpose in this tour, even on the days that we had a bad day at work or family or whatever, and then you see a text and say you ready to do a live. It's just like get used to say yes, let's go ahead and do it. But like I said, there's no one else except the Polynesian Eyes podcast that can give that to the people, this information, and it's just more of understanding our Polynesian civilization of the ancient times. So yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. Let's catch up on a couple of these comments real quick, Mr. Atero. I want to read this one.
All right, this is from Moment. Was it
Momentum
Moment
trading.
to Momentum Trading? There we go. 1, 2, 3. Lately, I've been thinking of the Tugufonua and how similar our people is to the ancient Israelites. We're literally born into a covenant as Tongan. Ooh, interesting. Tua, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like people make fun of us when we say, "Hey guys," when we look at how Tangaloa, Maui, and Loau came to Tonga Tapu, we
Mm,
say Hikuleo. It was the voice of God that led them there. How did
mm,
Israel go to find the nation of Israel find their promised land? They followed the cloud, the voice that spoke from the cloud and led
correct.
them. They went through the desert how many times, but they knew there was only one place that they were going to, the promised land,
Mm-hmm,
because the voice told them this is the promised land.
mm,
That is in many ways momentum how we view our fathers who first came and started the Polynesian civilization. They went, and people make this comment that's hilarious to me. If you believe that we came from the Americas, they say, then why didn't they stop in Rapa Nui first? Why didn't they stop in wherever? Well, it's because we have the belief they weren't just wandering nowhere without a goal. Hikuleo was leading them. And could they have
mm.
stopped on an island? Sure. But
Yeah,
Hikuleo would have told them, you just stop, but you're going to keep going until I
this
tell
ain't the
you
place.
this
This
ain't the
ain't the
place.
place. Yes,
And when they
yes.
arrived to Ata, they were told the place is close. And then they went from Ata to Tongatapu. And then Hikuleo said, this is the place. So we take the position, momentum. Even before the Tukufonua, there was a covenant people, right? And then leading up to Tukufonua, it was a reestablishment of that covenant through a restructured government structure under the Tu'ikanukupolo and with a parliament and a constitution. And then with Tupo the sixth last year, renewed that covenant. So 100%, I'm a believer, you know, that number one, Polynesians are a covenant people. When Tangaloa, Maui, and Lo'au came over, all of Polynesia were a covenant people because we're all one people, we were all one nation. Then, in order to survive colonization, a new covenant was put in place through the Tukufonua to really sanctify and to really isolate Tonga as here's a new government, a new covenant to help us survive colonization into the nation that we are in now. Any thoughts on that, Mr. Aotearoa? Anything to add?
Two, no, no, no. Two thoughts come to my head here. Great question by Momentum Trading 123. The practice of circumcision, which is a very, um, which a practice that people of Polynesia, especially in Tonga, practice, which is a sign of a custom that was practiced by the Israelites of old. And not only that, it's we kind of had the same, right, we had the same god, which is the hikureo, which is the voice. And the voice has always been described, even in the Israelites, as as being god, on how he spoke and kind of engage with his people. So that those are really strong parallels to how we are as Polynesians, and that's why it was easy for us to convert to Christianity, because it was the same. And just like the Israelites, they kind of there were many times they knew that the voice or God was there, but over time there were snippets of them kind of worshiping idols, worshiping ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
kind of the same thing with what Polynesians did, and we've kind of lost the meaning of Hikureo. I think that's maybe another thing we can touch by on. Who who in the world say that Hikureo was a
Female.
female? And not only that, they said it was this figurine that they I guess collected from Ha'apai or something, that, and they said that's Hikureo that they were worshiping. So that's another thing, and that's, that happened with our people, and that's why it was very important with that Tugu for Nua. It was a re-covenant to go back, and even Taufahau the first started that with the whole cleansing of some of these worshiping of maybe not the true God. That's why he kind of went through a, kind of more of a cleansing, because it wasn't the original Hikureo, that the ancient practice of old. So, same kind. If you just, those are parallels that I think that kind of draw us. That's the some kind of the same history of kind of our journey with God, kind of thing. Amongst Polynesians and the Israelites. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and just something to add real quick. The comments are starting to pile up, so we won't get to every comment. But if you have a comment that is very near and dear to you and you want to bring it up and make sure we mention it, there's the super chats that you can bring up. And then also, if you're
I paid
a
them.
paid member of the channel on YouTube, we
We'll
make an
definitely
effort
address
to make sure
those.
to bring it up. So, just a couple more comments here that we'll highlight. Haini Malo, he says Malo
Oh,
Motama. Malo
what's
Haini,
up, Heini?
good to see
Malo.
you there. And then here's another one, Masi. I'll read and get your reaction to it. He
All right.
says, this is from Semisto Guapo. He says, hey, brothers, I've been listening to many of your videos as I work on my graveyard shift. My dad passed away, knew many things from our Tongan grandfathers about them traveling all over the Pacific. In my questioning him as to why my great grandfather went to the Marquesas Islands, he said at the time to go and collect tribute. At the time, he said it was as if everyone knew that. I sure didn't. This totally matches up with what your dad, Tupo the Force historian, has said. Let me. Oh, I'll have to read because I have to read on the side thing here.
Okay.
Has said. Oh, and then that's it. That's the end of the comment there. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. So what I'm getting about this from Semishi Tuwafu. Hey, thanks for joining in, Semishi. Sounds like your father looks like had a role with collecting tributes to the Tuitonga, or like his responsibility, kind of his role. And that's, I think that's, there's no in denying that. I think everyone understands that the Inasi was practiced very, I think, all the way up to Laufiri Tonga, and it just kind of shrunk when Laufiri Tonga's time. But the Inasi was more of a collection of, what is it, to the running of the affairs and
Yeah.
exchanging
It's more of a
of
tax. The
gifts,
inasi is like a
tax
tax, and then the polo polo was like a religious. It's like a bringing a tribute. It's a
to
religious
the god,
tribute,
to the
which is why the
religious,
tuitonga was the one who oversaw the polo polo, and then the inasi was oversaw by the tuihatakalawa or
or
the
the Tuikanupolo.
tuikanupopong.
Okay. So, hey, that's pretty cool, Samishi Tuwafu. That's kind of my thoughts there. Tua, I don't know if you had any addition or maybe something
Yeah,
else to add on.
this is what happens when time goes by, and because I really, this is something that may have been common knowledge with our grandfathers and great grandfathers within Tonga, especially on Tonga Tapu. And because we never were colonized, the advantage is you have sovereignty and you can manage your affairs. But one of the negatives is your story doesn't get out as quickly, right? Because you're an independent country. The Western world says, well, you're a big boy, you take care of yourself, right? And we didn't have access to America, New Zealand, Australia as much as the colonized countries did, or France, or
Mm,
wherever, right? So that knowledge that our grandfathers, great grandfathers, and before, it was common knowledge to them, but that story, number one, didn't go out because of sovereignty. We were in many ways isolationists because we had to do that to survive, right?
yeah.
Not allowing others to own land in Tonga is an isolationist approach. Why? Keep foreigners out, and any foreigners who come in, you're disincentivized to stay and build wealth and influence because you couldn't own land. So that's one of the negatives of sovereignty, right? And
Mm,
maintaining independence. But the good news is we're now in a digital age. We're now in an age where information can flow quicker. We don't just rely on the academics and the TV channels now to get information out. We have podcasting, we have YouTube, we have social media where more ideas can come out and compete. And then those ideas that our grandfathers and great grandfathers knew of as common knowledge, that our
mm,
brothers and sisters throughout Polynesia, they forgot about it because of colonization and being disconnected from the core of the empire. It's kind of our duty now as descendants of our great grandfathers and so forth who ran and who were heavily involved in the central government and governing of this empire to get this story out and bring our idea to the marketplace of ideas and have it compete against all the ideas out there.
yeah. No, that's
Anything else on that, Mr. Atearoa? Any closing
no.
thoughts on the overlying theme here for 2025?
2025. No, I think we're definitely starting conversations because I'm just seeing it pop up of random random things that it wasn't talked about before, but people, because with more information, just kind of like I said to it, people are just willing to kind of put the puzzles, and that's kind of what it is and what we're trying to do, and kind of expand and have everyone just have that discussion is putting the pieces of the puzzle of our Polynesian civilization, because no one really understood that, and that, that's an awesome thing to see. And the good news is, this is we I think Tua and I still have a lot of passion to keep this going as long as we can, to kind of
Yeah,
further discuss, further um talk about the details, and talk about good and bad ideas, so that we can have a uh understanding of our Polynesian history, and that includes all the islands in eastern, western, all the way up to Hawaii, and all the way down to close to the Arctic of Aotearoa. So those are my
Aotearoa.
closing thoughts.
Yep, 100%. And just for kind of the viewers and listeners, some of these topics that we're going to discuss today, we drew on them because I think on Facebook alone, we have just under 40,000 comments
Yeah.
spread throughout there. It's kind of crazy. I never would have thought. I mean, on one of our Facebook pages in the last 28 days, we've had just under 400,000 views. Can you believe that? It
Jeez.
blows my mind. It's kind of crazy to me.
Mm.
So we try to respond to some comments. It's impossible, and we don't have the time and energy. But we do skim through some of these comments, and we see certain patterns, right? So some of these topics are driven from patterns we see in the comments and in the themes, and this is one of them. One of the very common themes we hear is, "Oh man, Polynesian Ice podcast, you guys need to stop. You guys are just disrespectful, causing division. You guys are ripping us apart. You're not bringing us together." And I wanted to bring that topic up because if I went and tried to respond to every one of those comments, I think my fingers would fall off of my hand. It's just too many of
I
those. So
I
yeah, go
I
ahead,
think you
Mushy.
wouldn't. I think you wouldn't be going to work if you had to respond to every single comment.
Man, maybe if I got a dollar for every comment I responded, man, I wouldn't even go to
you
work. But because
yeah
I don't
you
get that, sorry
yeah.
guys.
No, but I was gonna say to I think we've done a pretty good job. Just kind of little threads that people are having conversation. We'll just kind of include and just kind of add what our thoughts are. But I think the that's what we want, just to have people have that conversation, whether they agree or disagree. And and I also want to share also with the viewers on the live digital gava session that it's what I forgot to add in our 2025, that the impacts. But it's starting to be easier to invite our guests because they've
Mhm.
kind of heard of our podcast. So that's an awesome sign of where we're going and the amount of reach. Because after being almost a year and a half now, that it's very easy to it have guests to come on and to kind of expand their knowledge and just share their version of the Polynesian history. And that's a puzzle if people want to take or it doesn't fit, but at the end of the day, they have their time to share. And it's not causing it's only causing division if people are just, maybe our people are not used to having proper talanoa. Maybe it's just too much still savages still fighting outside. Everything is, if you have say something and they don't like it, they see it as division. But maybe they haven't had a proper talanoa just to kind of just to have everyone share ideas. And maybe this is the small piece of the Polynesianized podcast, is to have critical understanding and critique, and not get into physical or giving physical threats online. But hey, it doesn't phase us. It's just, I just think of
It's
that as
funny sometimes.
I see that now, that it's like little kids in the primary school still mentality. That's how I see it. I don't know, because
Yes.
I've seen those threats that people say, hey, if I catch you in Salt Lake, or if I catch you in, it just makes me laugh because I was like,
Yeah.
man, you remind me of when the little boys would fight on the side of the road when they're fighting over an ice block. Who had the bigger half when they split it? I don't know. It's still kids, but maybe our Polynesian people just need to have critical understanding and agree to disagree if their idea is not standing. But to me, I don't see it as division. It's just a
Yeah.
conversation, and this is where we stand until our idea has been broken into part and say it doesn't stand. Then we would admit it. But it is what it is, and that's why we keep going on it. And then if we get more information, it's either we kind of alternate and just add more information to what we've already presented. But I don't see it as division. But I don't know. That's my thoughts.
100%.
Long answer there, Dua.
Yeah. This is you know what makes me crack up, Masi?
Eh?
I guarantee you that Maduro in Venezuela was like, "Donald Trump, you've arrested me. You're causing division. You're causing division." in Venezuela. And I'm like, dude, your idea was weak. You were
Mm.
shutting down people, forcing people to do this, and that. And you're like, nah, nah, nah. You just had a bad idea, man. If you if you really were comfortable with your idea, you would engage and say, here are the reasons how and why. Like the history is behind that. And honestly, every time we've engaged in an idea to dig deeper, we see a trend, right?
Mm.
When we challenge the Tuitonga idea, we look at the archaeology, we look at the stuff, the Tuitonga gets older and older and older.
Yeah.
And then when we look at some of these other ideas of the Tuifiti or the Tuipulotu and then the Tuimanua, it gets younger and younger and younger. And
Mm.
we just that's just the reality. And we put it out there. We put it
Yeah.
out there on episodes and we tell people, don't take it from us because we get accused of you're not an expert. You don't know these things. We go read the expert's paper on scientific journals and they're like,
Mm.
"Oh, that's not what it means. You're not saying it right." We go and get the expert themselves on the podcast, like David Burley, who is a PhD, who's been doing archaeology for 30 years, who had geneticists do genetic studies and bring a guy with the uranium thorium dating and put all that data. And then all of a sudden is, why are you talking to that white guy about our history? You know? Now, who's
Yeah.
causing division? We're trying to bring data, we're trying to bring an opportunity to have conversation. We're not bringing division. We're trying to bring people together. You know, we've even been told, Mussy, believe this, maybe you've seen these comments. You guys are just racist. Racist. We're the same people. What do you, how if I put down a Samoan, that's putting down myself because we're all Polynesian. We're all the same
Mm.
people. We
Mm.
have great great grandfathers and great great grandmothers that are Samoan. We have ancestors from Fiji. You know, we have all, and somehow, see, this is how when you get overly emotional with your position,
Yeah.
you just go to you're racist, you're a misogynist. All of a sudden, it's like, wait, oh yeah, wait. I think you're starting to sound like a woke person, maybe. I don't know.
You're sounding more balangi. You're sounding more
Yeah.
balangi than you try to tell us we're being racist.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up is we see our message as we cannot be unified if we're not built on the truth. And we want the truth, right? And we don't just say we're one people for Mickey Mouse. Oh, we're one people because we're
Mickey
brown
Mouse, yeah.
skin and we all eat taro and we all like palusami and da 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 da. We are one people because we're all related. We come from the same origins. We have very common religious, historical, scientific, economic backgrounds, and from a same civilization that has lasted for 3,000 years. Like that,
Mm.
that to me is a unifying message. I don't know how you come across as causing division. Um, the other thing I will mention as well is one of the comments was, you know, I've been reading a lot of your comments and responses, and it's like trolling people, and it's not very respectful. And we're like, have you seen some of the comments thrown at us? Like the response is trying to be funny, but also to divert back. Dude, your idea is kind of stupid. So why are you attacking with a stupid idea? Come with a better idea. And yet we're the ones that are being called out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I was just gonna
Oh,
say, those are just, it's just quick, like what you said to we know when no one doesn't take give serious consideration on their comments. We don't. It's just we just do it real quick because like at the end of the day, we have jobs and other family roles that we're doing. Like we can't sit
yes.
there and if and I think we have responded to like. good comments of people who are trying to understand, and then we give the same energy back and give the same energy of a thoughtful answer. But like what you said too, we can't be answering every single comment. Like certain threads, we'll just throw one and just let the whoever's jumping on that
Run
thread of
with
that
it.
conversation just kind of run with it. But yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
My favorite threads to see, and we have a comment here I want to bring up. My favorite threads to see is when our other viewers carry the conversation for us, because that's what we want. We want people
that's
to
awesome.
engage,
Yeah,
have the conversation, throw data at each other,
yeah.
not to be personal attacks, but um, you want to read this one out, Masi. This
Yes,
person
sir. Yes, sir.
does comment a lot on our Facebook specifically, but you want to read this one out from Joe.
Fussy I too. Okay, you're admittedly biased. The issue is you're overemphasizing your Tongan Empire to level that is not provable, and most importantly, not was it congruent with
Hmm.
other island groups' traditions. You guys take it too far. OMG. All right, Malo Joe. Tua, what's your thoughts for Joe?
Yes.
Yeah.
My thought is this: the reason why we overemphasize the Tuitonga Empire, because our position is that was the empire, that was the Polynesian civilization.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason why we have to really push back with the Tuitonga heavily, because guess what the biggest criticism back to us was? The Tuitonga is not old enough. The Tuitonga comes from Haamoa. The Tuitonga never had an empire. So how do you expect us to respond? We respond with, hey, we looked at archaeology from the Tui Manua. It's only 500 years old. The Tuitonga is older. We look at who has the most ruins, not only within Tonga Tapu and Tonga, but ruins that are throughout Polynesia that are accredited by all the other islands as, oh, yeah, these are Tongan ruins. Even within Samoa is the Tuitonga. We even look at the scientific reviews of social structure and projecting influence outside of Tongatapu. Even the scientists say only Tonga was able to project power outside of the current geographic regions. So, Joe, you can say we overemphasize the Tuitonga Empire. Well, that's because the attacks are coming on the Tuitonga Empire, and we are pushing back data and proof that the Tuitonga Empire is the Polynesian Empire. So we kind of had this, I think, with Jake Fitzemanu, where he said, "Oh, isn't it better to have a conversation about how we're interrelated and how we're one?" We agree. However, when people attack a specific topic or a specific idea, we have to respond. And what I find funny is I'm not trying to be rude, Joe, but you and a lot of people who comment, it's like the bully on the playground who comes and punches first, and then when you turn around and do a 1, 2, 3 and they fall to the ground, they start crying and go to the teacher and say, "Oh, he beat me up, he punched me," and does this whole sob story about how he got beat up, but forgot one very interesting thing, that they were the first ones to throw a punch. And that's how I feel about a lot of this. This is why I find interesting, Joe, when you come out with, oh, our position about the Tuimanua and Samoa as the cradle of Polynesia, somehow that's unifying. Somehow that's not being disrespectful. But if we say Tuitonga is the seat of power, that is the centralized power, all of a sudden that's disrespectful. That doesn't
Mm,
make sense to me. But yeah, those are
mm.
my thoughts, Masi.
No, my thoughts. I mean, I know Joe, thank you for joining us and your constant contributions to the Polynesianized podcast. Um, I'm kind of confused because there's so many traditions that actually value that the Tuitonga did exist with vast amount of authority and power. So I'm kind of confused with other island groups because there are many islands within Polynesia that actually, with ruins and with oral traditions, that do discuss of either sending a family member, or a family member to marry, their highest valued rank daughters, sending them to the Tuitonga, or them just going over to Tonga, or having evidence of them building ruins in the Futuna, Uvea, like even all the way up to the eastern islands with the Cook Islands, Lalo Tonga, and also even in Tahiti of women and stuff coming to Tonga and having children with the Tui Tonga. So I guess, and that's kind of why we are here in this live digital cover session. There's so many oral traditions that we need to figure out what is to believe, what is this doesn't make sense. This is just created in in the 2020s or something, who knows? But I'm just saying there's so many traditions out there that we need to like we need I think as Polynesian people we need to kind of self-reflect what is true and what is not. Maybe a self-critique on which oral tradition actually holds some value, and some of them are just, and then we touched on it. I don't know if we released the episode or not with I think we did, with even the
The
land
oral
courts.
history. Yeah,
The land
in
courts, because
Hamua.
people just create oral stories because they know they won't get it a right to the that land, but creating the oral stories that their generations after themselves, that they can have some oral story to maybe fight for it, and then have claim to it for some other reason. If that family kind of dies out, or if they all move to overseas, they'll have claim. So
Hmm.
it's, yeah, so those we got to figure out with all these histories, and that's probably a problem with maybe, Tonga coming so late, maybe, that's part of not being colonized. We've kind of come late to kind of correct and kind of say this oral history doesn't make sense, as Tahiti being the origin of Polynesia, or the
Yeah,
Tuimanua being the origin, or the Tuipulotu. And that's, we've kind of left that to the academics. But we're in the 2020 now, and this is a platform that we can have uh, a in-depth conversation on try to understand and move out certain oral traditions or oral stories that really don't hold any value. It's just created just to, for some reason, a feel good. Maybe it's a feel good for that certain group of people. But that's just me. That's just me there.
yeah, 100%. Malo, Joe, appreciate the comment
Malo,
there. We don't want people to think we only bring the comments of people who are positive.
agree.
We'll bring
Yeah,
it up. But once again, if you want to add a question, feel free to add a super chat, and we'll definitely make sure to bring you up. The next one is this is another one, and this is something that I feel even a lot of all of Polynesia, all of academia, and even many in Tonga misunderstand this idea, Masi. And the comment that usually goes, Masi, is Tonga occupied Samoa for 400 years, or Tonga conquered Samoa and stayed there for 400 years. And even Tongans will say that, like, hey, man, we came and conquered you guys for 400 years. What's your thoughts on that? And what's kind of your take on whether that's the right way to look at it? Do you agree with that approach? And just kind of what your thoughts are on that?
Uh, well, my thoughts on the Tongan occupation. That occupation, like Tongans are, and this is probably the mistake. They're saying that they went and had an actual war and took over Upolu, Savai,
Yeah.
Tutuila. Right? It was never the case. It was we're all the same people. It's just that when they went to Haamoa, they also have authority there because their mothers were from there, and that's within the same family. The authority there, when you're very high rank and it's a hierarchy. Polynesians, our DNA has been very hierarchical. So when you have somebody with the highest title, you know in Polynesia, you're going to demand certain respects. You have a big following, you have an entourage, you get the best warriors, you probably get the best resources, you have the best. I think that's, and another one was the advance of navigation. That's
Yeah. The
probably the big
technology,
thing.
the knowledge. Yeah.
Technology. you have the best of everything. So you're gonna bring a lot of respect wherever you're going. And then you're adding on your family relationships on your mother's side, wherever you go. So to me, that's how I see it. And that's why people kind of maybe our Tongans are misrepresenting or misinterpreting as they think that they went and took over. No, they didn't go and just take over. Maybe they're misinterpreting that because they had a big entourage and a big presence in Samoa, right? In Samoa, they think they took over. No, no, no. They had a big presence because of the status and the high rank and the entourage that this is the highest title in all of Polynesia. Wherever they went, it felt like they kind of did whatever. And then you're adding on along with their connections within Upolu, Sabai, Tutuila, and
Yeah.
even in Manua. So that's how I see it, right? It was more of just it was a family relationship, and that's what's unique to the civilization and empire of Polynesia with the Tuitonga. Europe and stuff was and Rome, especially the Empire of Rome, Egypt, they went take it by force. It was through military combat, taking over new territory, taking in new people and forcing them to assimilate. Samoa didn't really have to assimilate to anything. It was just a Polynesian culture. We were all one culture in that time, especially in those early times and ancient times. And our family relationships, that's what made the Tuitonga Empire was the family relationships that it had all over throughout Polynesia. So that's how that's how I see it. I don't know if you had anything else.
Yeah,
Well,
I really think it's I don't agree with the idea of Tonga came with a military, right? And we came and we just slaughtered Samoans and
mm,
established a military state and slaves and stuff. That's not how I believe it happened. How it happened was like the Polynesian Empire from Tangaloa, Maui, and the Loau. They established themselves in Tonga and then they explored islands. You know, some of these islands may have been inhabited, many of them may not have been inhabited, but they went and they established, settlements throughout these islands, and we were all the same people. It's how that would be the equivalent of the Tupo family today saying, "Oh, we um we went and invaded Homa." Like, no, it's like Homa was always part of Tonga. Like, this is it's the wrong way to think of it that way, in my opinion. And to prove that point, there are two things. The Tuitonga, who followed the customs of the Tangaloa, who also resided on Tongatapu, practiced polygamy and had wives from throughout the Polynesian
yeah,
Empire, right? And many of the Tuitongas, many of them had Tongan mothers, but many of them had foreign, in the sense when I say foreign, in the modern context of
non
Samoa,
tungatapu.
Tahiti,
Yeah,
non
yeah, yeah,
Tongatapu.
yeah.
Excuse me. But the reality is, they weren't foreign. They were the same people, distant relatives, and distant influential families throughout the Polynesian Empire. And that famous story of the war in Samoa, right?
Mm,
That freed Samoa. We've confirmed this with genealogists and people very knowledgeable of genealogies in Samoa. Talakai Faiki, when he was, the war with Tuna and Fata. Well, guess what? Guess where Talakai Faiki's mother was from?
mm,
Samoa. And
mm,
which area of Samoa? The village where the quote unquote war, which we don't call a war, it was a scuffle. It seems
mm.
to be a one time event. That was Talakai Faiki's mother's village. And there is a high probability that Talakai Faiki grew up in that village, right? He grew up in that village. So, once again, this idea that Tonga's was this foreign occupier of Samoa is like, no, these were interrelated ruling families who were connected. And when you really break down how the story goes, number one, the only thing everyone agrees on is that Tuna and Fata had an attack during that presentation, right? And Tonga
Yeah.
confirms it. In Tonga, it's confirmed even further because Tonga changed our cultural structure. You know how they present Tapuaka Toho and so forth?
Yes.
I In the past they would put Tapuaka Toho facing down,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they would just call out how many you had. After this incident, because it happened once and it was a scuffle and it was a surprise attack, they switched how you present it. Now the puakatoho is turned upside down, feet up, right? And you have to lift the puakatoho up when you
Yeah.
count it. And so it's confirmed not only with Samoan oral history, it's confirmed with Tongan oral history, and even the cultural practice confirms that because of that singular event, not some massive war, a surprise attack, the culture practices were changed. But they were the same people,
Mm.
right? This is what we're talking about, and this is not just unique to Samoa. We had conversations with PhDs, professors who've done research, and historians. There were Tuitongas who had mothers from Uvea, right? There were Tuitongas who had mothers from Hawaii. So
Yeah.
it's a false assumption to think, oh, was a rare or a unique practice to only to Samoa. This was throughout the empire, and there is no occupation or invasion because those are the families that settled and explored all of Polynesia and settled it. So there was nothing to occupy. The only thing that occupied Polynesia was when colonization came. That's when occupation came. Prior to that, there was no real occupation. That's my 2 cents there. Anything else there, Mr. Aotearoa?
No, no, that's pretty good. I mean, unless somebody has some other thoughts, but that's kind of what I understand of the Tuitonga um, history and its creation of the Polynesian civilization was through marriages and being the highest prestigious title, and wherever he went, because he had wives in certain areas, or his mother's family were from that area, he brought a lot of attention and stuff, and people can misrepresent or misinterpret that as because he was there, he occupied and took over through military. I mean, we're not saying these scuffles happened throughout history. I mean, there was certain battles that the Tui Protonga probably had to rediscipline certain extended families
Yeah,
or
the guys who
go other.
wanted
I
to
mean,
rule with a heavy hand,
yes,
right?
yes. I mean, yes. And it to me, it seems like during that Kau Ulfo Nuofekai seems to my understanding, out of all the Tuitonga, it was not like a very through marriage and stuff. He seems to be him and that five generations when he's kind of moving around, especially when he's staying in Savai with that pure, they call it the Patonga kind of stuff. It seems like that's where he kind of did a rampant going to Futuna, Uvea, places in eastern Polynesia to kind of military enforcement kind of thing.
Yeah,
So, but other than that, majority of the Tuitonga was through marriages, and not even that. Before the Tuitonga, Tanga law was all through marriages and having family relations everywhere.
yep, 100%. Here's a comment I'll read out real quick, Mussy, and if you want to do a response here to Joe,
Okay.
he says, if we can just get you two to acknowledge there are oral traditions in Tonga that point to Tu'imanua as its earliest origins. You don't need to agree with these traditions, but they should be acknowledged and entertained as a possibility. Only then can we move on and talk about other things. I readily admit that the Tu'itonga definitely took over the imperial tradition afterwards, and it seems even to surpass it. Any thoughts on that, Masi?
Traditions. Well, that's why we're having that discussions. When I say amongst our Polynesians, that's what we're doing within our own some of these traditions, saying that it came. I think he's trying to refer to maybe the Tui Manua. There was other empires before the Tui Tonga kind of thing, or what
Yeah, he's kind of
traditions?
saying that, Masi. Let me kind of rephrase it. growing up in Tonga, especially in Mu'a, where the
Yes.
Tuitonga resided for the longest amount of time. And uh, how often did you hear the term Tuimanua being brought up in oral histories?
Nada. Nada.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing. When did you first hear about these Tuimanua ideas and that the Tuitonga came from the Tuimanua and that the Tuimanua was a pre existing empire?
Overseas. Only when I left Tonga.
Yeah.
Only when I left Tonga. Yeah. Yeah. So okay. Okay. No, and that's and Joe, thank you for your participation. But that's what we're trying to understand with these traditions that have been passed. For example, what has our family done to kind of correct some of the okay, for example, the Tuitonga list from Shirley Baker and the Catholics. We've Tevita Fale has gone in, corrected those lists, right? We're thankful. This is the thing. We're thankful what they've done, but it's incorrect and it's not the correct. We've done the best, and this is it the most correct one? It's the ones we can identify where they're buried. Devita Fala has gone to every burial site of each of the Tuitonga in his list and say that this is where they're buried, and then their connections to the current leading monarch. That's why he's kind of dubbed it as the most longest active um, kingdom or monarchy in the world, right? Because it's still going from the ancient times, from Tangaloa to the first Tuitonga Aho'eitu coming to now. That's an example of the correction. Some of these traditions that have come out from other Tongans, right, who are not from Mu'a, and we're giving our side of the tradition, saying that's that doesn't sound right and that is not correct. And they can create whatever oral traditions they can have, and we're saying that's not correct. This is the correct version, and we're just presenting it out there and let the people decide and which one will stand, which one is wobbling and it's gonna die out, or if that's gonna stand. Because to me, that's what we are doing to try to regarding the Tongan tradition you're saying with oral history that we're doing is to dis- decipher on which one is more accurate or not. And that to me, that's what we're doing. I don't know. That's my thoughts there, Dua, regarding Joe's question. I don't know if you
Yeah.
had anything else.
The challenge is, Joe, is number one. I know a lot of people listen to our accent and think we're Tongans who
You have to
totally
sound
grew
more.
up
You have to sound
outside.
more British. You have to
Yeah,
sound more
maybe I need to
British.
have more of a. I need some water. I need some water,
Yeah, not
right?
water.
Yeah, I
Wata.
need some water. So I know we have an American accent because we have American roots, right? You know, and so forth. But what you need to understand is we grew up in Tonga. We grew up in Mu'a. And when we say we never heard, not only did we grow up in Tonga, but we grew up in the ancient capital of Tonga, the seventh settlement of the Tuitonga, the longest settlement of the Tuitonga, the settlement that has more ruins than any of the other settlements, right? And so we grew up amongst the families who managed the Tongan Empire, who are descendants from that, and we never heard we come from the Tuimanua.
uh, our family are also caretakers of the Oni Langi that only noblemen are in charge of. Like these are credentials we're just kind of throwing out there. This is where we stand, and it's up to you if you believe it or not.
Hmm.
Just to add on,
Yeah,
like what you're saying, we're not just going to other people. We have our own family Langi that we're the caretakers of, and we don't just get this history from a third party or a third person trying to tell us what is the correct history of the thing. And that's what we're doing, correcting some of the other oral histories. Because hey, Tongans can do it too. Just create, and not even that, other academics who are non-Tongans trying to create oral history about Tongan history. That's what
yeah,
we're trying to do, to decipher and kind of say, nah, that's incorrect. That's not there. And this is just another voice saying this is our idea. This is where we stand. But no, I didn't want to cut you off, Tua, but I just wanted to
No,
kind
no,
of just throw
100%.
that
That's
out there.
important. What I do want to add and to continue on real quick, Joe, we took the Tu'imanua seriously, right? When people came with that idea that the Tu'imanua was the origin, we said, okay, let's seek after the evidence and how do we reconcile it? Because we recognize a lot of people in Ha'amoa are invested in this. And even some Tongans that share ideas that we never heard of growing up in
Mm,
Tonga, but they've invested their whole career and their life on it. So we did take it seriously. So what did we do? We pulled up archaeological studies done on oral histories, collection of oral histories in Samoa. We pulled up archaeological studies that were done in Manua, on Tau Island, on the settlement that's considered the settlement of the first to Manua. And unfortunately, every time we did that, the data would come back and say Tu'imanua is 500 years old. Tu'imanua only has some mention in some of these other places, like, oh yeah, we descend from the Tu'imanua. Those are things that are just stories that are mentioned, but we never found a single structure outside of Manua that even in Samoa, even in Western Samoa, we never found a single ruin that Upolu or Savai'i said, oh yeah, this is the Tu'imanua's residence. This is his blah blah. We couldn't even find it outside of the Manua Islands. Okay. But we took it seriously and said, well, there's gotta be some connection on why people say this. And then in some of the people we interviewed, we found an interesting data point that kind of potentially could explain this. And what was it? Siausi Ilayu went to Samoa, interviewed. He has Samoan heritage, and he asked the question, talked with people in Manua and so forth. And you know what he learned? 60% of the Tu'imanuas were female.
mm,
And then some of these Tu'imanua Fefines married a Tu'itonga and had a child with a Tu'itonga. And then we find out who was that Tu'itonga that came from a Tu'imanua and a Tu'itonga marriage? Kaulfonua Fekai. The same Tu'itonga who established the Tu'ihatakalaua, the same Tu'itonga who said, in order for the Tu'ihatakalaua to establish itself as a new power in the government, in the military, and administrative, the Tu'itonga needed to relocate. So where would he naturally relocate? To Manua, because the oral history says that he took on the Tu'imanua title. Now, if that is true, and it seems to have some backing to it, because you know Samoan genealogists and historians said from Kaulfonua Fekai to Tapuosi, there is strong oral tradition and genealogy in Samoa that they resided in Samoa. And guess what? In Tonga, there's a match. They said that these Tuitongas moved their residence primarily to Samoa and would come back to Tonga at least once for the Polo Polo and whenever they desired to come back. Now,
mm.
if that is true that the Tuitonga also held the Tuimanua title, one could say that the Tuimanua ruled all of the Polynesian Empire because that would be true. And that all of Polynesia recognized the Tu'imanua because why? Not because the Tu'imanua some on its own had some influence or power. It was because the Tu'imanua was also the
The
Tu'itonga.
Tuiton.
And then all of a sudden you can make those things make sense. But if we don't have that story, we don't have a story to kind of unite the conflicting data points. Any thoughts on that, Masi? We do have a paying member who made a couple comments, and
Okay.
because they're a paying member, we will make sure we bring up their comments.
No, no. I mean, this is kind of with Polynesians. I think we need to not. Just because somebody use it in a speech, a certain oral history in a speech, I think we need to be a little bit more critical thinking if doesn't mean it's always true. You know what I mean? So,
Entertainment value. You need
it
to
can be
gauge entertainment
you
versus factual.
it's dude, that's what we do. Just because oral histories is used in especially in certain laungas, that's what they say in Samoan when they do speeches, doesn't mean it's true. Do some self-critique. You can't People who usually take it that it's true, it's either they're not used to either be engaged in understanding the Polynesian history to kind of, there's some people just use it because it flows better. It sounds like what you said to it's entertainment. It can, not everything they're gonna say they take it on face value. Do a little self critiquing on those things, and I think that's what we're doing with some of these Tongan oral histories that's kind of going throughout Polynesia. We're just coming in a bit later than some of, like what you said, Tua. The digital age is here. We can do this podcast. I'm living in Aotearoa. You're in Las Vegas, USA. We can still do this. Right? If we didn't have this platform, guess what? The oral traditions that our brother Joe is listening to, that would still be the one everyone's listening to
Dominates the
because
discussion. Yeah.
that's what everyone gets access to. So we're just coming later to the game as people familiar in Tongan history and giving the Tongan oral history from our side, especially coming from, and we state our credentials, right? We grew up in Mua. Our family are caretakers of an actual langi that the first Tuitonga was buried there, and we have these oral history that's kind of come through our growing up and also through the Vitafale that we're sharing with everybody. And you can take it or not, but the Polynesian Eyes podcast is going to keep moving forward and sharing our ideas, unless it's debunked. But so far, it hasn't.
Yes. All right. We do have a paying member of the channel making comments here, so we want to honor them. She has that little symbol next to her name. It's Maria Kavanaugh 7938.
Malo, Malo
Um,
Maria.
you want to read this one, Masi?
Okay. Do you acknowledge that there is a possible bias in the information that your history may report or slash or pass on? What's your thoughts there, Tua, for Maria's
Yes.
comment there?
We'll take it off. She had another comment said, please don't
Okay.
bring it up. So we'll just respond to that. But Maria, thank you for letting us know. We just see you're a paying member, and we always
Yeah.
try to bring up paying members. But we will honor because you're a paying member. Whatever you say, we will do. So we took it down. But this is also a general theme in
Mm,
the comments we see online. Is you guys are so biased, right? You guys are so biased, and all you talk about, kind of like earlier, like Joe, you overemphasize the tuitonga and all this other stuff.
mm,
Number one, everyone has bias. No one is somehow, you know, 100%. They're always objective. We're influenced by the ideas that we grow up with. So to just kind of build on that, everyone has bias. The question is your bias reasonable? And what do I mean by that? Reasonable bias is, can you at least explain the idea? Does it make logical sense? Is there any evidence that kind of backs up your position, that backs up your logic? Then you can have a conversation. And to me, yes, we do have bias, but we also the bias with our ideas, but we also bring what we think is logic. We bring evidence, we bring pattern recognition, and we say, this is why we believe in what we believe, and we recognize we have bias. And then 90% of the time, the feedback or the counter to that is, you just need to be quiet because you're being divisive. You need to stop that because the history is settled, full stop. That's it. Kind of hard to say we're the biased ones when your response is overly emotional and not really driven by data and facts, and you're not open to the possibility that you're wrong. right?
Mm.
Any thoughts to that, Masi? And I'll just, rather than reading out Maria's comments, we'll just
Yeah.
talk about the general idea that she's expressing in some of her comments.
Okay. No, I mean, this is my thoughts here, Maria. It's only bias if it's not true. If it's not true and we're still advocating this is our idea, and or it's been debunked, then that's bias because we're holding on to something that's not true, or it's been invalidated. Then we won't hold on to it. That's, to me, that's bias. But to me, if what's wrong, just we're just sharing the truth that we believe that this is the accurate or most accurate of the Polynesian history, and that's what we're presenting, and it hasn't been debunked, or it hasn't been even just a little cut here and there. It's been standing, and we're gonna stand on that until it's been proven otherwise. But to me, I don't see that as bias. I just say this is the most accurate and this is what it is. I only see bias as if it's incorrect information and we're still advocating this incorrect position or idea, then we must that's really biased. That's like you're still advocating for something that's not true, that's been debunked. And to me, that's how I see it, as we're being biased. That's kind of my thoughts there, Tua. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yep. Not 100%. All right. But either way, Maria, thank you for letting us know not to bring
Yes,
up the
malo
comments. But
malo
thank you,
maukawa
Maria,
and
for being a paying member of the channel. We greatly
yeah.
appreciate it. All right. Um, this is another interesting theme that we get a lot. I can't tell you how many comments we get um, of yeah, you know, a lot of it from our Samoan brothers and sisters who are like, you commoners, you guys just need to be quiet and accept that your royalty comes from Ha'amoa, and you know, you guys are just commoners. You guys should be grateful um that you guys are marrying into the Samoan line so that you guys can have royalty. And you know, I find it kind of hilarious.
It
But
is. You're
any
making me
in what's
laugh.
your
Just you just you're just making me have these flashbacks of those comments, and it makes me jiggleish, makes me laugh because
what
it's
are your
funny. It's
thoughts?
funny.
What's your thoughts, Mr. Arturo? We got our digital producer, research analyst Grok to do a little discussion for us on the difference between, because royalty assumes you have a king, right? Like royalty means kingship. So I was like, you know what? Let's have a little bit of a discussion on the difference between a king and a chief and royalty versus commoner. But before we go there, what's your initial response
Dang.
to that kind of general thread in a lot of the
Yeah.
comments?
No, I mean it's funny because there was no, and that's probably the wrong, misinformed positions. Many people always say in Samoa that they had kings. There's no, Samoa never had a king from Upolu or Sabai. You can say they had king through their marriages, but regarding a practice structure of kings, that never, it was only a little chiefdoms, right? Chiefdoms in districts. So and people, I mean, what do we wh- do I have to state which Tuitonga is buried at our Langi Malmaloa? Like the Tuitonga Tuipolotu is or no, Tapu Osi. Tapu
Yes.
Osi is buried there. Is that enough to say what our connection is that not enough to say our connections to the Tuitonga, from that line, that there's only certain families that have a langi, because I don't know any other families that have a langi of the Tuitonga being buried there, unless there's a nobleman of Kalanivalu, or what is it? What's the other guy? Tuila Kepa, with some other ones. So I mean, that's kind of where we come from. If they want to go in more details of our connection compared to theirs, then we can compare and see who's much more relevant and who's royalty. But other than that, maybe that's why it makes me funny, because it's just hilarious,
Yes. Let me let me share to kind of answer this. I've mentioned it a few times in some of our responses on social media. Let me share some old knowledge from the ancient capital of the Tongan Empire, where the ruling families of this empire were there for close to 1,000 years. They say, you know who you are when you die,
Mm.
right? And what that's the saying. You can go around and say, I'm this, I'm that when you're alive. That's all stories, right? You can say, I'm this, I'm that, but the truth comes out when you die. And what do we mean by that? What I mean by that is when you die and you get buried with the commoners, well, guess what? You're a commoner. But when you die and you get buried with the kings and the queens, then what are you, Mussy, at that point? Then we know you're royalty.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, so
No, no.
go ahead,
I had
Mussy.
a quick, I had a funny. I already told you and the rest of the family. There's some people who want to be royalty that all of a sudden they go and find a langi to try to have their ancestors buried, and some little family instances. But it just made me laugh because there's so many people want to be royalty and tell their family members, and these are, and this probably happens maybe what people with langis like under Kahani Valu and such that people want to get buried at certain areas. But some people just need to understand there's people who want to be royalty and they'll do anything they can to just bury some ancestors there to say they are royalty in certain places. But I'm just saying, I just want that when you were saying that just made me kind of jiggle on that because that's definitely a thing of
Yeah.
a family incidents that's happened recently. But
Yes. So rather than responding to every comment, which is pretty big, of you commoners just need to be quiet, I ask all of those commenters, those viewers, those listeners, when you die, where will you be buried? Okay. And if you're going to be buried with commoners, don't come and accuse us of being commoners.
mm,
Okay. And don't put yourself that you're royalty when you're going to be buried with commoners. Like that's a good way, the best way I can say it, or at least you have the option. If you have the option to be buried with kings, but you choose to be buried with commoners, okay, you at least chose to be buried with commoners, but you had the option to be buried with kings. But if you had no option to be buried with kings, then please don't go around social media and call others commoners. Okay?
especially when you know you've never had what it is to feel like what is royalty when especially our folks in Haamoa, they never had royalty. How are they supposed to tell people that actually
Yes.
seen and have royalty how to be royalty when they've never experienced it?
No,
Chief is
and
not royalty.
that's a good point. So I'm gonna bring up the screen here real quick so we can do a little discussion on what's the difference between a king and a chief,
Mm,
right? So we had Grok do some research for us. Um, let me take this banner off real quick so we can read this a little bit better. So the prompt that I gave Grok was difference between a chief versus a king, right?
hmm
And it says the main difference between a chief and a king lies in the scale, structure, cultural context, and nature of their authority. Though there's significant overlap, and the distinction is sometimes more about terminology and perception than a hard line. So, this is why people get confused because there's a lot of overlap and there's a lot of similarities. But the big difference is scale, right?
hmm
So he puts together a little table here, the aspect of a chief and the aspect of a king. You want to read the first one, Masi, the first one right here.
All right, the typical political unit, that one.
Yeah.
Okay, leads a chiefdom, usually a group of villages, communities, often kinship based. So that's the definite for that's for the chief. King leads a kingdom, typically a larger, more centralized state or territory.
Yes. And what is the lesson we've learned, Masi, in the two going up on 2 years of doing this podcast? One of the things we learned is, where do we find decentralized power, i.e., chiefdoms? And
I'm
where do
more,
we find
yeah,
centralized power and the difference between those two?
Tonga, the Tui Tonga, especially. Yeah,
Yes. So
yeah.
a chief is a smaller scale, decentralized power, i.e., Matai system.
Mm-hmm.
That's a chief right there. A king, larger scale, centralized power, right? So the next one, scale and complexity. I'll read that one.
Okay.
Smaller scale, less centralized, intermediate between tribal societies and full state, right?
Okay.
So that's the intermediary between your village, your little smaller territory, and the larger state. That's the chief role.
Mm-hmm.
Intermediaries with the people and the bigger state. The king is larger scale, more bureaucratic, often withstanding armies, formal laws, and taxation.
Taxation.
Huh. What are your
Chiefs
thoughts on
don't
that,
tax.
Masi?
Well, no, that makes sense, right? The king, especially the ancient kings, the Tui Tonga, there was a tax system, tax to religion, tax to the daily affairs of running the Tuitonga civilization, Polynesian civilization. There's that tax there, and you're absolutely right. There's really no. I've never heard of Maria Toa having a tax system, or even what is it? The Mataafa, those kind of chief, them high chiefs in Samoa, or even the Tui Manua. They always said that Tui Manua had this thing called the Umiti, but the problem with that is no islands ever remembering going to Manua to offer. I feel like that was just created, and this is the thing, right? It was maybe used in a speech, and people took it face value that it was true and say that it actually happened. But it was just, I feel like it was just created as a counter argument of the Inasi or Polo Polo with the Tuitonga happening. But you're right. I mean, you're right. Chiefs don't have a tax system like a king. King does.
Yeah. All right. Read the basis of authority. That's the next one.
All right. Basis of authority. Chief often hereditary but can evolve consensus, prestige, or achievement. Authority frequently relies on persuasion, redistribution of wealth, and moral ritual legitimacy. King, almost always hereditary, more absolute or sovereign power, often backed by divine right, law, or military force. Tua?
Okay. Chief system, Matai system. If I were to say, how do you describe the Matai system? Involves consensus. That means people vote.
The
Ta'ainga vote.
family. The
They
family has to
agree,
agree
right?
who's going to be the title. Correct. To take
Prestige.
this chief.
Marietoa did not come from a royal line. He had some achievement, some prestige that he got.
Yes.
That's how that starts. Or
And that
achievement.
Yes, and the achievement, what he did was, right, regarding that incident, that he was able to let the Tuitonga leave the island for however long. Like that was a huge
Yeah.
achievement. No one
Yeah.
made the Tuitonga leave when he didn't feel like he had to leave at right
Yes.
that time, right? That's an achievement.
Yep. Authority frequently relies on persuasion. Isn't that the Matai system? Persuading people, right? And then making them do redistribution of wealth and
Mm-hmm.
moral ritual legitimacy. That that to me sounds like decentralized power in Samoa. That's a chiefdom,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now look at the difference. The king is almost always hereditary. What was the Tuitonga? Was there ever a vote?
Oh, yeah,
Who's going to be
father
the
to
next
son,
Tuitong? It's
father to
hereditary.
no, no, and here's the. I just want to add on to this, and this is the indigenous. This is like the most native thing because the custom was so strong. I think it was it Talatama that did one of the Tuitonga Talatama that didn't have a son or an heir. He made because the tradition had to happen from father to son. They had the new Tamato Tuitonga as a new right
A piece
or
of, yeah, a doll,
new
a
or
wood
piece of
doll.
wood doll or a kari or something. Just had that piece of wood there because and made that the father, and then you know, his brother, which is Talatama's brother, be the son of that the tuitonga made wood because that was the customs because it had to be father to son. So
Yeah,
that's 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 how strong it is. Has to be father to son. It's no get the tuitonga's families to decide who's going to become the tuitonga, the next tuitonga. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. And it was because um Talatama, I think, who's the one who said, no, our system is father to son, father to son. I'm not going to take it from brother to brother. So
Yeah.
that's why they made that little system to legitimize going from brother to brother. They created a fake thing in order for
Yes.
them to legitimize it.
Keep have the tradition
Yeah.
go on.
And
Yeah.
then once again, absolute or sovereign power. A king must have absolute power, right? The Matai system does not give absolute power because why? The Ainga can remove your power,
Yeah.
right? You're subject in a way to the people, often backed by divine right. Why did the Tuitonga have that right? Because he descended and was the heir from Tangaloa. And why did
Mm.
Tangaloa have that? Because that is who Hikuleo designated to be the king, right? And so
Yeah.
there's a divine right. There's no divine right for the Matai system. Is there a
No
divine right there? No. Maria Toa didn't have a
subjectivity. Yeah.
divine right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right by law or military force. So once again, Samoa so far is all on the chief side, not the
Mm.
king side. And remember, to have royalty, you have to have a king. All right. Next one I'll read to you, Masi. Power and control,
Yeah.
limited coercive power, no full police slash military monopoly, relies on support from kin slash groups, can be checked by councils or customs. On the king side, it says greater centralized and coercive power, monopoly on legitimate force in true kingdom slash states.
Mm.
Which, yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Which side does the Matai system fall on, and which side does the Tuitonga system fall on?
No, the Matai is definitely on the others because it's within your kin and your followers because that's what the whole fighting for power and getting backed by Western powers. It goes back to me with the Maria Toa and Mataafa having their certain groups within their certain districts, and they were fighting each other with the. I think it was the Germans backing Mataafa and the British were probably backing or the British backing Mataafa or Maria Toa. So those were the little set groups, right? And when we talk about with the centralized and coercive power, monopoly, and legitimate force, whoever became the you know the Tui Tonga or the Tui Kanukpolu or the Tui Hatagalawa, they had the legitimate force of controlling and monopolizing the warriors wherever they may be. So that's why it was difficult to kind of pin each of them against one another because there was no conflict, and this is evidenced by Mua not having a fort
Yeah,
be there because the Tuitonga was
supreme
the
power.
highest,
Yeah,
was the absolute power, and he divvied out the affairs, the political stuff, but the main power was within the religion, being the gatekeeper of the religion which was the highest esteem of the three kings in Tonga at the time. So, yeah, and that maybe that's another thing. That's another oral history that's probably within Tongans that get it wrong. They keep saying that the Velata war was the Tuitonga, the Laufiritonga was Tuitonga.
Yeah,
See, that's another oral history
he was
that
just a young chief. He wasn't
he was
Tuitonga.
just he wasn't Tuitonga. I'm telling you, if he was Tuitonga, it would have been a different story. You're telling me that it would be a different story. But thank goodness it didn't be a difference. It didn't happen because who knows? Maybe Taufahau wouldn't survive if that was a thing. Taufahau probably understood that it was just a scuffle and he wasn't Tuitonga. There's a reason why there was not another attack when Laufiritonga became the
Was
Tuitonga.
Tuitonga. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's another oral history that that's we're correcting. Like it's all part of saying that's the incorrect version of the
Yeah.
Velata story.
No, and that's the thing. You got to remember that the battle in Velata, Tupo the First was not at the peak of his military power,
Mm,
right? When he unites Ha'apai, Vava'u, and Tonga under him militarily and politically, that's when he was at his height. And
yeah.
what did he do? Did he go and challenge the Tu'itonga when he was at the height of his military and political power?
Mm,
No, he never went to Mu'a. That goes
mm,
to show you that if Laufiri Tonga was Tu'itonga when Tupo the First didn't have any real political, universal political and military power, it would have devastated him.
mm-hmm.
However, even when he was at the peak of his power, he never challenged the Tu'itonga. And that's
Correct.
that's like you said, a lot of people have that mistaken idea. They say, "Oh, he conquered the Tu'itonga." No, that
Yeah.
never happened. And actually, it's quite miraculous what the Tu'itonga does. The Tu'itonga actually empowers Tupo the First, and that's something that I think is quite miraculous. You want to read
Yes.
the next one, Masi?
Yes. Cultural context, chief. Common in is it anthropological
Anthropological, yeah.
anthropological descriptions of indigenous, tribal, or pre-industrial societies, many Native American, Polynesian, African, or Pacific groups. King, associated with larger, more state-like civilizations, European monarchies, ancient Egypt, China, etc. Tua?
Yes. So I want to address here, like it says, indigenous, tribal, or pre industrial societies. Now, it mentions Polynesians and Pacific groups because what is the current perception of Polynesians? That we were not a united nation. We were not structured under a political, economic, um, and religious structure. We were not a state. They view us as these little dots of islands that were never unified as a nation. Okay. So that's why they say that the chiefdoms, they just call us chiefdoms because of the scale, and there was not structure in the rule and there wasn't centralized power. However, when you understand the influence and the scale of the Tuitonga Empire, then all of a sudden you see that the Tuitonga is not a chief, but in the king realm
Mm,
because he had smaller entities throughout the empire, throughout, from Hawaii down to New Zealand, down to Easter Island, and then that tail that goes towards that little tail that goes into Melanesia. Those were chiefdoms, all decentralized power. Everything on the left column, that includes Samoa, was decentralized chiefdoms, and there was only one king over all of that, and that was the Tuitonga. And so that's why they put Polynesia on the left because they don't understand our history. They don't realize that we were a united nation under one ruler, and there was structure, there was taxation, there was
mm,
centralized power. So that's why it has that in there. But once again, decentralized power on the left, chiefs, organized power on the right at a larger scale.
mm,
That is not found in Samoa.
yeah.
Okay. Now, people say, oh, why are you beating up on Samoa? Because it's our Samoan brothers and sisters who consistently make that comment. You commoners, sit down and be quiet. The only reason why you're royalty is because of marrying into Samoa. Right now, Samoa hasn't graduated from the chief definition.
Yeah.
They're still in the chief definition. They haven't graduated into the state or the kingdom. Last one, terminology note. Chief is often used in English to describe non European leaders, sometimes seen as a Eurocentric or diminishing, right? So that's why
Hmm.
when they refer to Polynesia, they always just like to say they're all a bunch of chiefs because they're not recognizing Polynesians as large scale structure. And then on the right, king carries prestige of European style monarchies. Some paramount chiefs are functionally equivalent to kings. Any thoughts on that, Mussy? What are your kind of your thoughts on that review that we just did?
No, pretty. I hope hopefully that clarifies some of the definitions that's probably people were not understanding the difference, right? So when you're paramount chief, and then there's functions that you act as, right? So as the king, but you know, regarding force and projecting influence out and being state-like
Centralized
and
power.
centralized power, you don't have it, and there's a strict tradition of you know hereditary, which or hereditary passing on the titles, which is not always the case, and which is why the Maria Toa title is still being fought over various families on who's going to be the next Maria Toa because they haven't
Voted.
agreed to one,
Yeah.
and it's been like man, Tanumai Fili's been the the recent one, Maria Toa title holder has passed away so long, but they can't even agree. So, right, that Paramount Chief is still a chief, and it's been out of action for how many years? You can't do that in a sophisticated civilization. Have somebody not have the title to lead a nation if it's been absent for so long. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's another example of why you get colonized quickly because if it takes time, you have a leader come up. That's a gap that it can be exploited by European countries, and that's why the history of Ha'amua it is what it is, and the history of Tonga with its continued hereditary passing of kings and having king-like um, history of ancient times still be now, we're able to avoid that. So I don't know. That's my thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to address something. They've asked us not to bring up the comments, but I think this is something. This is a great example of what we're talking about, right?
Mm,
And Maria, you got to remember why are we having this conversation on the difference between a king and a chief, and the difference between a royalty and a commoner. We're having this conversation because who came and brought the accusation that we need to be quiet in Tonga because we're commoners? It
mm,
wasn't us. We didn't go and make an accusation that someone was a commoner or not, right? Once again, someone threw the punch at us and said, "Be quiet, you commoner. Sit down and be quiet. I'm the royalty, you know?" And then, we're seeing stuff here. It's like, now there's an accusation going on even from a paying member, and we're very grateful for this paying member,
yeah.
that we're being so biased. What was biased about what we just shared? We defined the difference between king and chief, and then we said which then we took the two systems of the Tuitonga and the Matai system and said which category off of these definitions. We didn't make the definitions. And then we said, which definitions match up? Oh, the Matai system and the system in Samoa is a chief system. The Tuitonga lines up better with the king system. So If that's the case, then the accusation or the claim that all the royalty come from Samoa, it can't be correct because it's only chiefs in
Mm.
Samoa. And the royalty has to come from a king structure. So the royalty must be coming from Tonga. And then what happens? Because we got punched first, and then we countered back with facts and
With a one, two,
logic.
three combo, eh?
One, two,
One, two,
three
three combo.
combo. And then all of a sudden, we're the ones that's causing the problem. We're the ones
Yeah.
that's biased. I don't. I just. This is the whole reason why we're having the conversation. Um. So yeah, that there were several. I can't tell you, Joe. Even Joe earlier made the comment of commoner, right? Because some people,
Mm.
there's a comment going on. It's like, oh, the only comment that I've seen on social media of commoner was it was a Tongan. I was like, well, I'll tell you right now, there's at least 80 comments online minimum saying you Tongan commoners just need to zip it, right? Anyways, that's my thoughts there on that. Anything else, Mussy, you want to bring up on that?
No, I think that's been. I think we definitely broke it down and hopefully made it in a way that it's relatable and understandable for our folks that view the Polynesianized podcast.
Yes. Here's an interesting comment here, Masi. I'll read it to you. In
Okay.
Tongan tradition, every Tongan traces royal ancestry or a blood connection to the lineage of the three kings. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that? From Four Pillars Electrical Limited.
Maria, four
Maria, look,
pillars,
you get free advertising.
electrical three, four pillars, electrical Ltd. Thank you for your question and participation. That is definitely true. I don't know anybody that's like it's either to one of the three kingships in Tonga, or it's like to all three, or even one or two. Like it's very interconnected. And like I said, like that's Tonga can trace their lineage there, and throughout Polynesia, before, especially it's there's been a lot of pockets of people kind of not able to trace because of colonization. That's kind of really what helped to kind of stop that connection. But what Tonga, like what our brother said here, or sister Four Pillars Electricals mentioned, that that is definitely true. Every Tongan can connect to the Tui Tonga, Tui Kampolu, or the Tui Hatagalawa uh, kings dynasties in Tonga, and that is an example of throughout Polynesia before colonization
Yeah,
to the Tui Tonga of old, right? This is of old, and maybe even before that to the Tangaloa um,
100%.
time. So to me, that's if Polynesia was never colonized, I'm telling you, our we would be able to trace all of Polynesia from Hawaii to Aotearoa to the Maori, everywhere will trace their lineages back to the central Tuitonga Empire in Tongatapu, because that's how it was. So that's just my thoughts.
Yes.
It's just people don't see that. It's because of the unfortunate events that happened in the 1800s with the colonizations.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
100%. And this is very true, Four Pillars. And we can even use a modern day example, but we will start with the old example, the Tokatufa, right? The Tokatufa was marrying throughout the Polynesian Empire and having family ties to the various island groups, right? Then there was the Tonga Taki, which is this specific one, this child or this offspring would be the leader, right? Which is why it's called the Taki. Now, that doesn't mean just because that leader was there that that was the only blood relation to the Tuitonga or to Tangaloa. There were probably multiple others from mothers of not as high of a ranking, right? Because you need to have the father and then the mother's ranking, them together really propels your ranking. So you have that for throughout. That's why when certain people say, well, we have descendants of Tangaloa, yes, and so does Uvea, and so does Futuna, and so does Tahiti, and so does Hawaii. You know what I mean? The descendants of Tangaloa are many. I think they did a genetic study,
Mm,
and 1 in 8 Chinese men descend from Genghis Khan.
mm, mm.
That's millions upon millions. And
And
why? Why?
we know he had hundreds of wives, right?
Exactly.
That's exactly what it was.
Yes.
So yeah.
So if someone were to stand up right now and say, "Well, I descend from Genghis Khan," that means I'm the heir. Not really, because there's 100 million guys who also
Mm,
descend from Genghis Khan. But it is that unique one that was designated as the heir. That's the one that carries the inheritance and the power. Now, let's bring it now to a modern application. You're familiar with Tupou the Fifth, right, Masi? The
yes.
oldest son of Tupou the Fourth. He has
Yes.
many children. He
Mm,
has many children. But
mm,
why are none of his children the king of today?
mm,
You know
mm.
why, Masi?
They were made illegitimate.
Yes, they were
Yeah.
illegitimate. Therefore, they did not get the inheritance, right? However, can they say, I am from the kingly line?
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is true throughout Tonga as well. Everyone is interrelated. The question is two things: are you interrelated into the line of the heir, or are you interrelated to a high line on the father and the mother? That's that's where there's the structure and the layers, right? And
Mm,
here's the modern example, like we said, you had Dupo the Fifth had many children. You know, he was many times called the the playboy, like crown prince or the playboy king, because it's not that he didn't like women. He obviously liked women. He had many children, but he did not want to get married for whatever reason.
mm,
And so the line now goes, and then the line was supposed to go to the next brother, right? The
mm,
next brother would have been the heir, which is Maatu, and he has 2 sons. But why didn't he get the kingly line or his sons inherit? It's because Tupo the Fourth removed him from the line of succession because he married a commoner before he married the daughter, I think, of Amalie Toa. I think
mm.
is who he married. But one they
Granddaughter.
the
Yeah.
yes,
Mm,
the granddaughter. So Maatu's sons technically can say, well, we're the heirs. Well, yeah, because you should have been next in line, but unfortunately, because your grandfather made a decision that you wouldn't be the heir, it goes down to Tupo the Sixth to today. So
mm,
as you can see, as and now, if we were to expand just the royal family today to 100 years from now, imagine the tens of thousands of people who now say, "Oh, I descend directly from Tupo the Fourth," and so forth. It expands and it can grow. And that is just with monogamy, right? Then you
mm,
add polygamy into the mixture. There are many layers to that.
mm.
So yeah, that's kind of the response to that 4 pillars. So
Good
appreciate that.
question, and that's very true for Pillars Malo.
Um, let's see here. Let's look at the time. We're getting close on time. I think we'll close it out here, Mussy. We're kind of hitting the two
Okay.
hour mark. So Uh closing thoughts, Mr. Ateroa.
No, appreciate everybody's reaction, engagement. You know, we're looking forward to expanding more. We got some exciting upcoming interviews that our paid members will get first access to once it becomes available. Looking to start 2026 on a good note. You know, what we can do for this Polynesianized podcast. Very looking forward to moving this along, and also having everybody to share their ideas and just learning more and gaining knowledge of our Polynesian history. So, Ofatu to everyone, and I hope this live digital cover session was well worth it to tune in. And until the next time, malo.
Malo, Mr. Atero, I want to thank, as you did, Masi, want to thank all viewers, listeners, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, Patreon, Instagram, and then also on Spotify. We're also on Apple Podcasts. We're on iHeartRadio, Amazon, and Audible Podcasts. Want to thank everybody. 2025 was a fantastic year for the podcast. And it always feels good to have that, response back from the followers and the listeners,
Mm.
because it's like Masi said earlier, it's not every day you're like, oh, I'm super excited to
Mm.
do a podcast. I'd probably say 80% of the time I'm excited to do it, but then there are certain days where you're just like, ah, man, I'm not excited about. But we're dedicated and we try to provide value to everyone who listens in and to everybody who contributes. A big shout out to all our paying members.
Mm.
What I learned today is like Maria, she's a paying member, but she doesn't always agree with our positions. And I
Yeah,
think that's cool. I think that
yeah,
that's cool that we have paying members who see value in what we're bringing, providing a space for us to have ideas. And it's not just people that who always agree with
agree
our
with it. Yeah.
positions. We don't expect everyone to agree with our positions. Why? Because you have your perspectives, your experience, oral histories that you've heard, and ideas that you can bring to the table. And we put it all out there and let them battle it out. And then all the viewers and listeners can sit back and say, you know what? I think Tua's idea here was a little weak. I'm kind of more in Maria's court on this one.
Mm.
Absolutely fine with that, right? That's not why we're here. We're not here because we think our ideas are unbeatable or that there's not anything we can learn. We're here because we want to facilitate conversations. We want to share the message that we believe we are all one people. We were united. Our ancestors did fantastic things. And we have a great heritage. We have a great history and story to tell, and we want to make sure we can share that story and allow others to share their perspectives and their stories as well. Also appreciate a lot of our viewers and listeners who give us ideas on topics,
Mm.
on
People to reach out. They've
people
given
to
us
reach
to
out
reach
to.
out. Yeah.
So really great. And they're sending us articles, sending us videos. We really appreciate our viewers and our listeners who share that. We are open to it. And as always, a like, a share, a comment goes a very long way. And there's ways to, you know, super thanks, super chats to contribute. And then also being a paying member on YouTube also is a great way. We are in the double digits now, Masi. We broke into double digits for paying members. Little
Oh,
victories. So there's a big
oh,
win there. Really excited for breaking into 2026. And like we always share with every episode that we do, apart from saying thank you, is be bold, right? Don't be afraid to ask hard questions, but always, always stay curious. Till next time, peace.
peace.